Hello and welcome to the Etsy Podcast. I'm your host, Justin McRoberts, and I am my own guest. Earlier this year, we changed the format of this podcast, moving away from interviews, which we will eventually get back to in some way, shape, or form, to kind of a Q&A, Q&R setup. You bring questions to the table, and then I dig in as deeply as I can on some of the things that matter to you. That was the original impetus for the podcast, was paying attention to the things happening in the world and conversations I was having with, whether they were coaching clients or at the time people who I was pastoring, and looking for voices in culture and the cultures around us that might speak to us and to you about the things that matter. Now with the podcast, these questions normally come from Instagram. Every week towards the beginning of the week, I'll host an AMA and Ask Me Anything in the fields of art and religion and leadership. And so if there were things that you are wrestling with regards to your own art or creativity, with regards to religious practice or religion in general, or leadership, leading teams, leading individuals, folks will throw some questions at me, and then I'll respond at Instagram over with a text response, and then grab a few of those and dig in deeper here at the podcast. I'm having a great time with that, and I hope it's serving you where you are. Let's dig into some of this week's questions, beginning with this one. How do I make my schedule more full and fulfilling rather than just busy? The way I responded over Instagram was saying that's hard work, which it is, and almost always requires help. So hire a coach. Hi, that's me. Hire a coach. Meanwhile, that work begins by identifying and planning for the things my soul wants to be doing. That's where we're going to hang out during this little segment here. The difference between being busy and being fulfilled is a question of desire. Of course, when I posted it, I typoed, and desire is spelled DISIRE.R. Don't know how that happened, but it did. It happened that way because I was clumsy thumbing. The difference between a schedule that is busy and a schedule that is fulfilling almost never has to do with the number of things on the schedule. It has to do with what things are on the schedule. So busyness is a way to talk about like soul level noise. For most of us, busyness is a matter of having soul level noise. If you looked at the difference, if you compared the life and the schedule of someone who said they were living a fulfilling life versus someone who was living what they would call a busy life, oftentimes, not every time, we can talk about the volume of things on that list as well. Oftentimes, the number of things happening in a week or in a day are probably very similar. The difference is that people who believe and feel like they are living fulfilling lives have prioritized things that are closer to their heart's desires, and people who are living lives they identify as busy have not created enough time for the things they're wanting to be doing, so everything feels like noise. Everything feels like noise if I have not prioritized the things that my soul wants me to be doing, or that maybe I'm designed to be doing, or everything sounds like noise or feels like noise and chaos if I'm not doing things that I'm really good at. If I'm spending most of my time doing things that I'm just told to, doing things that I'm not great at, things that are just sort of the sand of life, as it were, as opposed to the big rocks, we can get into that analogy another time, then regardless of what it is, it ends up feeling like noise. So, prioritizing and learning to prioritize things that matter to us usually ends up being the trick. Let's go to kind of a level above that first, an altitude above that first. Yes, busyness can be a problem. The fact if we have too many things going on, it's very, very possible, maybe even probable, that in moments and seasons of busyness, it's important to take a step back and pull some things off the calendar, pull some things off my schedule. Let me suggest, though, that that's not so that your life stays unbusied, that your schedule stays unfull. I think seasons of departure from a full schedule mostly have to do with reorienting my soul's desire, so that when I refill my schedule, because I will, I am prioritizing my health, I'm prioritizing my connection with with primary relationships and with God. I'm putting the things on the calendar that are more deeply connected to my soul and my soul's happiness, like in a place where I know I'm going to get to them. Not always going to be more time, but like I know I'm going to get to things that are important to me. Removing like items from a schedule, I think almost always is a momentary practice that allows us to get altitude so that we can refill our schedules in ways that are healthier and provide more space for the things that matter most. Again, the difference between busyness and feeling busy and feeling fulfilled is knowing that, is having space and time for things that are actually soul fulfilling on my calendar. So here's a conversation I had recently with someone who's a client, coaching client, newer coaching client, about this difference. And we talked about using the time that they had coming up, a short like vacation time, to actually take a survey of the things that they were doing, to quite literally make a list of like, this is the stuff that fills my time. And because they had spent so much time being responsible, which is really good, and we'll come back to that in a second, being responsible to like whatever came through the doorway, they didn't know like what I don't even know. They said what I want to be doing. Like I feel just busy. I don't feel fulfilled. Most of the stuff I'm doing is meaningful. I get it. People tell me it's meaningful. It's nonprofit work. It's charitable work. It's, I'm taking care of people, but I don't feel fulfilled. And their job while they're away for the next, I think, 2 weeks or what have you on this vacation time is to make a list of everything that they are doing that fills their time and their schedule, and actually attend regularly to that list and see what their heart lights up. About, to look at that list. This is what I'm doing. Like what jumps out? What's like yes? What says yes, or what does your soul say yes to when you look at that list? In empty space. You don't have to do it today, but when you think about doing it, like, does your soul light up? And as they're doing it, this was the suggestion, as you're looking through the list of things that you normally do, spend 15, 20 minutes a day doing this, does something else pop up? And it does something else pop up consistently. Because here's the other thing that oftentimes happens is, as we're being responsible to the sand of life, and we need to, all the stuff that we've got to get done, we can drown out potential dreams or potential plans because we're supposed to just get this stuff done. So sometimes when we're paying attention, we look at that list of things that like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is what makes my schedule up. If I can get enough altitude and pay attention to it, I can start to hear in the back of my mind, do you remember when we were younger, we talked about doing this? The soul and our subconscious come to the fore and say, so this has been a good season. Again, I'm coming back to that. I think it's time to reapproach this dream, this big fat plan. So in all of this, I want to be really cautious about not making an enemy of a busy life per se. Like busyness can be a problem, or not making an enemy of being responsible for things. In our youth, we are oftentimes not primed and prepared. I can't come up with a third P there. We're not primed and prepared. We're not ready to actually be responsible to a deep dream in our hearts and souls and our minds. It is sometimes a really good and very redemptive and responsible thing to do, to spend a season just doing responsible work, to train our hearts and souls and our minds and our bodies to actually put the work in it takes to make things happen, so that when the season comes, when this dream that we've buried somewhere in our deep psychology actually comes, like when we can actually make time for it, I've become the person who can be responsible for this dream. Which is to say this: sometimes the difference, those moments when we're feeling the difference between being busy and being fulfilled, what is happening is we've come to the end of a season in which we've done the training in responsibility that has prepared us for the dream that we buried. I don't like what happens oftentimes when we begin to resent like the daily grind of life, or we resent like the daily mundane sand of life. I don't want you to ever resent your life. If you've been doing nominal tasks that you feel detached from, that you don't feel a deep connection to, and you're feeling kind of worn out by that, I'm going to suggest that you've possibly been in a season of life in which you were learning to simply work because work needs to get done and not work from inspiration. In our youth, if we were to apply our energies to this inspired, wonderful, energizing idea, I'm going to guess, and this happens all the time, that you wouldn't have the discipline to actually execute the dream. Because at some point, you have to become detached from the dream and the energy of the dream in order to make it happen. Which is to say, at some point, as you're working on this dream, this thing that you care about deeply, this fulfilling work, at some point, you will have to become detached from it in the same way that you feel detached from work you don't care as much about in order to get it done. Because if we treat our dreams as precious the whole time, we never actually fully execute. That's the full answer to this question. How do I make my schedule more full and fulfilling rather than just busy? First and foremost, get some altitude, pay attention to what you're doing, and see what pops up for you on that list. Is something highlighted? How do we prioritize that? Or see if there's some dream that's been buried that's saying to you in the back of your heart, your soul, your mind, let's do this because it would make our life more fulfilling. And then as we refill our schedules, let's prioritize the things, make more time for the things that are more soul fulfilling. And this, don't resent the season of life in which you're just putting work in, because that season has probably primed you for putting the work in it takes to actually make a dream happen. Second question was, I've been in a season of not really connecting with songs. They're talking specifically about church music. What's your experience of this? And what's your experience with how to connect with the divine over changing seasons? I'm only bringing this back up because this is a question that keeps coming up. I think this is happening for a lot of us culturally. I think this is happening for a lot of us, and we are sharing a cultural experience. This is why Scott Erickson and I have done these prayer books over the last few years. We've done 2, and we've got a third one coming out next year. Is because the ways we go about practicing prayer, the mechanics of our prayer are important, but they're not as important as the essence of prayer. And the essence of prayer is the ongoing, ever-present conversation between my soul and God, my soul and the divine. That's always happening. The tool I use, whether it's songs or whether it's scripture reading or whatever it is just a tool. Is it important? Yes. But the importance of that tool is established in whether or not it's effective enough to get me into that conversation that's actually happening. So one, if you're this person or if you're like this person, don't think there's something wrong with you. It's just that you've come to the end, at least for now, of this tool being effective. And that's a good thing because it's an indication oftentimes of growth. You're not bored. You've just changed, which means you've grown. So it's time to relearn your soul. Here's something really specific about music, though. The way we have gone about building a culture of music, the tools we've provided, the musical tools we've provided over the last, 25 to 30 years, for church-going people who are trying to connect with God in some shape or form, that tool is really, really specific, and it's really, really limited. And I'm a person who I do enjoy church music, but I also enjoy church music with all the limitations it comes with. And I'm kind of excited about the cultural moment we are sharing in which those things are less satisfying than they used to be. Because it means we are culturally growing up a little bit. I think church music can be beautiful. I think some of the church songs can be really, really great songs. But I think the ability of church music, the way we've gone about it for the last 25 to 30 years, has a very limited positive impact on our collective human experience of the divine. And that if we were to stay there, we would remain in an emotionally adolescent phase of spiritual life that I think we should be growing out of together. That's not to say that everyone needs to abandon church music. Please don't. But if you are running out of gas, No. If you're falling out of love with the feelings that with your experience of church music, and if you don't have those same warm fuzzy feelings that you used to have when you listen to those songs or songs like them, that's probably a good sign. It also means you get to enjoy that tool for what it is and not be as dependent upon it. It was good for a season for us to emote and express the way that we've been emoting and expressing in that particular way. But I wonder if the cultural tide has turned for a lot of us, and that thing needs to become smaller so that we can experiment and grow more spaciously with regards to our connection and even our emotional expression as it relates to the divine and to God. This question, and I know a little bit of this person's background, so it was kind of powerful. Literally, the question was just how to grieve. And the way I responded on Instagram, I said, deep and fully. Grief is a way for your soul to let go and remember. If we do not do that all the way, things linger instead of set us free. Grief is a way for us to sometimes, I'll say oftentimes, is a way for us to recognize the value of the life we've been living up till now. Grief in some ways can be kind of a celebration of how things used to be, and like a confession or like an admonition or a recognition of a good, that this thing was good and is no longer. Grief is a way for us to say this was good and I'm going to miss it. Can be a way for us to say this was good and I'm going to miss it. Grief then, because if we do that, if we do that well and fully, it means that we can let the thing that was in our past be what it was and appreciate it as it was in the past, with all its limitations, and then let go so that whatever happens tomorrow, I have like more space in my open hands for. If we don't grieve deeply and fully, and there's a little caveat here somewhere. If we don't grieve deeply and fully, what ends up happening is this thing that was good in my life, I want to keep it as it was. And so I'll grieve a little bit, and then I'll kind of latch on just a smidge. And then as I turn to my future, I don't have enough or as much room in my hands because they're not as open to receive what is happening in the next season, which, by the way, will look like this. If I'm open-handed and I receive what the next season can offer me, I will hold that for a time, and then it will change, and I will need to be able to grieve and let go of that as well, because that's just how life turns. We have seasons of goodness. We recognize that goodness. We grieve over the loss of what was, so that we can then let go and move on into what happens next. The way I write this in a book called It Is What You Make of It is, if I don't give grief or anger or frustration its space, it will steal it from somewhere else. And the place it normally steals it from is my capacity and my ability to receive the goodness in the next moment. If I hold on to my attachment to yesterday, I limit my ability to receive what is available to me today, to and for me today, and to plan for, hope, and dream for my future. Grief is my soul saying, let's put this down and be thankful for what was so that we can be ready for today and for tomorrow. I have to do it deeply, and I have to do it fully. And if I can't do that deeply and fully, I need to go get some help. And usually that happens in therapy, is I talk to someone and say, this is why I'm attached, and can you help me let go? This question's fantastic. Could you say more about figuring out how to connect with God after untangling? The reason I like this question is because someone was paying attention last week and remembered that from last week. There was a question last week about reconnecting with God after untangling, and I said a few words, and I'm going to dig in a little bit deeper. I said these moments and seasons are pretty much never about the health of your soul or the nearness of God. They're almost always about the tools and the practices we use to experience the pervasive and relentlessly consistent nearness of God to our souls. An untangling process in life and in culture, institutionally, interpersonally, intrapersonally, It's not just when and as things untangle, it's not just unfortunate. It can feel really unfortunate. It's also utterly and completely necessary. So very attached to the last question and answer about grief and letting go so that I can move on. A lot of the conversation I'm having now with whether it's leaders of institutional spaces or participants in institutional spaces that have to do with this untangling, the things in the past no longer work the way they used to. A lot of this conversation is now moving towards the need to recognize the limitations of the tools institutionally, interpersonally, and intrapersonally that we've been using to do life. This broad season is reflected in personal experiences of things no longer working the way they used to. This is simply what is happening, and it can be difficult, and we can call it an untangling. I would rather reorient the word untangling, and this is the part I didn't say last week that I do want to say this week. It's not just an untangling as if we are victims of and witnesses of what's happening. It is an invitation for you and I to let go of how things used to be, and that's usually, and this is my take, and that's usually because I think God is inviting us personally and collectively into something else. I have no idea what that would look like. That's not some deep kind of prophetic, I know what's coming next kind of a thing. But it really does feel like there's something on the horizon that we get to share in. And if we are, insofar as we are, so many of us are having this conversation between ourselves and loved ones, or about our institutions, about things being so different and this untangling, it just smells to me like we're in a moment, that we're at the end of a moment, and being invited into another one that comes after this. So we can call it an untangling if we need to have some distance and feel a little detached. I totally understand that. But I think it's an invitation to let go. And the question I would ask us about, can you say more about figuring out how to connect with God after untangling, is what do you feel like you were tangled up with? And can you see the ways in which you are attached? So maybe it's not a matter of just an untangling. Maybe it really is a matter of letting go and detaching yourself from the things that you have been latched onto, the expectations you had about culture, of God, and of yourself, so that as this next moment presents itself, and as that invitation is made for the next moment, you can be prepared and ready, thankfully, for what comes next. That's it for this week. Thank you for listening to the podcast. I mentioned the book that Scott Erickson and I are doing. We just actually turned in the manuscript this week. That book comes out next year in the fall. It's called In the Low. But before that, a whole year before that, I am dropping a book. It's a collection of poems and prayers around the practice of rest. It's simply called In Rest, and it comes out on September 9th. Of this year, so just a few weeks away. If you're a listener to the podcast, it's possible also that you're one of the Kickstarter supporters, so thanks for making the book happen. That is coming up pretty soon. I hope you enjoy that book as well. Well, until next time.